Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. 93, and welcome. I've decided to do a new series. I'm calling it Practical Magic. As magicians, we are taught to not only acquire our magical tools and various things, but we're also taught to make them ourselves. Now, obviously that's not practical all the time. I mean, most of us, especially urban solitaries and such, it's not very practical for us to say, put an anvil in our bachelor apartments and start smelting swords and daggers and such. So obviously we have to acquire a lot of our magical tools from other sources in our communities. Generally, these turn out to be things like daggers, swords, robes, things of that nature. But there are quite a few things we can make ourselves, and should make ourselves, and in some cases are absolutely required to make ourselves because we can't get them from other sources or what have you. The first of these, I think, is good for my first episode in order to cover is the cakes of light. These are very essential to Thelemites. I've found that obviously you have to make them yourself. You can't just go buy cakes of light. I mean, you can go buy cookies at the grocery store, but it's not quite the same thing, obviously. There's a certain formula and ingredients needed to make such a thing, and obviously it's a very easy process, and so I decided to do a video to try and show people how it's done. The ingredients are all in the Book of the Law if you know where to look for them, but it's not really told what proportions, what steps, how to go about doing this. So hopefully this video can help those who want to make their own cakes of light for both Wiccan or Pheonix ritual. And well, here you go. So the first call is the recipe. Where do we find the recipe? I've found the recipe that works best for me, which I'm under the impression is the proper ETC recipe. I'm not entirely sure on that, but you can find it on hermetic.com. I'll put the web address up on here, and I'll show you guys the website so you know what it looks like at least. There it is. Alright, there it is in the camera. So, yeah. Basically what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you guys to the kitchen, and we're going to do this recipe step by step. Alright, so here we are in the kitchen. The first place we're going to look for our ingredients is in the Book of the Law. This is in chapter 3, verse 23 and 24. Open it up there. And let's take a look here. For perfume, mix meal and honey and thick leavings of red wine. Then oil of upper melon and olive oil. And afterwards, soften and smooth, douse with rich, fresh blood. The best blood is that of the moon monthly, then of the fresh blood of a child, or droppings from the host of heaven, then of enemies, then of the priest, or of the worshippers, last of some beast, no matter what. Now, for thick leavings of wine, the recipe calls for 2 liters of port. I have here the cheapest port I could find. You don't need to use good wine. You're going to be boiling most of it off anyway, so this is the cheapest I could find, at least at my local liquor store. So 2 liters of that, it's about a half gallon for the Americans watching. Next we call for about 1.5 cups of whole wheat flour. That's basically what they're made of. And then honey, as chapter 3 calls for. I found it good to use the purest honey possible. I found myself some organic honey here, therefore no crappy preservatives and all that other shit. I mean, these are magical cookies, remember? And about 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil, which is pretty easy to come by in most grocery stores. Now, the hard ingredients to get at is the oil of avermelon and the blood. There are a lot of crappy substitutes out there for avermelon oil. Perhaps I will do a future episode, if I'm so inclined, to show how to come about making your own avermelon oil, or possibly what sources to get it from. In this case, I have here the real deal, given to me by a good friend. There's very little of it, as you see here. We won't need very much in order to make it, because the real deal is pretty pungent, just even to smell. That's how you know the difference between the real shit and the fake shit. This is pretty overwhelming. It's got a very strong cinnamon flavor. I mean, the ingredients are, for the avermelon oil, are cinnamon oil, myrrh oil, olive oil, and galangal essential oil, which is, and depending on where these oils come from, what sources, what processes were used to make them, decides the success of the final avermelon oil. So I've got this from a good source, and I'm going to be using that. Now for the blood. A lot of people have problems, especially in a group environment, with using, in the case of what it says in the book, the best blood is that of the moon monthly, which basically means menstrual blood. That of a child basically has been interpreted by most to represent the placenta, which most hospitals apparently, I don't know this practically, but apparently most hospitals will allow you to keep after a birth, which is apparently good to use in a Eucharist, to be made to be later eaten at the child's first initiation, which would be pretty awesome. But also, it calls for the blood of enemies, which I don't suggest going out there and killing your enemies and using their blood, but you can interpret that one how you will. And the blood of a beast, no matter what. So, since most groups tend to shy away from actual blood, you could go to the butchers and get cow's blood or chicken blood or whatever you feel. Most groups shy away from these practices because of, I mean, it's very, the chances are very small that you can contract any type of disease from any kind of semen or menstrual blood or even animal blood through your stomach. It's very hard for these diseases to actually survive in the human stomach, so the fear is negligible. But since some groups incorporate vegetarians and such, I was suggested by a thread I found online, I don't remember exactly where, but a chicken egg is a good substitute, since it is both the dropping from the host of heaven, in the case the, I guess, chicken embryonic fluid, I mean, it's the female germ cell, as well it is the blood of a beast, no matter what. So an egg will be used today because, well, that's the best generic use for any kind of group activity, and if you have any kind of coven or group like the O.T.O or Temple of Thelema or anything of that sort, it's a good vegetarian alternative. Now, I've got my wine going here in a pot. I don't know if you can see very well. It's been going for about 4.5, almost 5 hours now. I basically just got it on a low heat. As you can see on my dial, I've got it like on 3 or 4 on my stove. You want it at the lowest heat possible, so that the wine just sort of evaporates and steams. It doesn't actually ever get to a boil. And you just leave that for 5 hours or so is what the recipe calls for. I find it takes a little longer. It's already been on there for 5 hours, and it's still liquid. You want it to get to a point where it's just kind of like a thick leavings, hence leavings of wine. So we'll come back to it when that's ready to go, and we'll start actually making these things. Alright, so here we are. The wine is pretty much turned into this sort of gel type stuff. So basically, what I'm going to do at this point is add it to my flour. Probably enough right there. Gross. And start kneading that around, and then basically add my honey and a tablespoon of olive oil. Hold on a second. I'll just get back here in a second. Stir this around a bit. Now, as you can see here, I'm basically just kneading it around until it sort of becomes like a brownie type dough. The wine has pretty much become like molasses now. You can see how sticky that is. So basically, I'm just going to add my honey. Good amount. It's got to taste really fucking good. I mean, we're going to be ingested. And add the melon oil. There. About a tablespoon of olive oil. Now that my dough has kind of become like a brownie type consistency, I'll flour up my baking sheet, and I'm going to spread the dough out with a roller, flatten it out, and get ready to start cutting them into cookies. I almost forgot, I'm going to smooth down with the blood. So now I've added an egg, and it's got more of a liquidy consistency. And now I'm going to mix that together, stir it up, and throw it on my baking sheet. Sorry I have to keep clicking off, on and off all the time, but it's not appropriate for me to hold the camera and knead dough at the same time, since I do only have 2 hands. But here it is, rolled out on my thing. And then I'm basically going to take just this basic pill bottle, thoroughly washed, and basically just poke little cookies. Then I'm going to take those, I'm going to put them on a floured baking sheet and put them in the oven. So there's the first tray done. Now I'm going to put them in the oven. I've got it preheated to 300, and they only need to go in for 4 or 5 minutes. So I'm going to turn the camera off again and put them in, and I'll show them to you when they're done. 93. So there they are, totally finished. Since they were only in the oven for about 4 or 5 minutes, when you take them out, they won't look done. But here they are now after sitting for a couple hours, and as you can see, they are hard cookies. When you first take them out, they may still be a little soft. Basically, just let them cool down, they'll harden. And there they are. There's your cakes of light. So I hope that was educational to people who want to make their own cakes for their own private, say, Mass of Pheonix, or be part of a group that practices the Gnostic Mass, or the O.T.O, the Thelemic Mass, or anything of that sort. Even Wiccan groups that call for cakes and wine in their ceremonies, and you want to make the proper cakes. These were done using the formula from the Book of the Law, so I'd say it's a very reputable source. And I hope that was worthwhile for everyone watching. Blessed be, and 93. Love is the law, love under will.